This is a quick lecture on writing a timed argument essay. So the first thing I want to do is go over some tips for writing a timed essay. One, you want to plan your attack. Create an essay map, do a brainstorm, but you want to identify your main points and you want to write your thesis statement first. Remember, your thesis statement is the most important sentence of your entire essay, and so if you have that written first, you'll have a clear guide for how to continue to write your body paragraphs so that they fall in line with your thesis and support your thesis statement. You want to watch the clock. Don't stress, but be aware of your time. How much time do you have for each part of the essay? You want to get to the point. This is not a process paper. It's not a paper that you get to take home. You don't have a couple days or a couple weeks. You have about 45 to 60 minutes to write it, so you want to get to the point, be clear and concise. Always leave 5 minutes to the end to reread what you've written, revise. You can do last-minute cleanup, insert anything that needs to be inserted for clarity. So timed versus process papers, what's the difference? The biggest difference, clearly, you have less time. Less time means less frills. So your introduction is going to have to be shorter. 2 to 3 sentences is fine for a timed essay. So what you're going to need to do is remove or shorten your hook strategy. So instead of telling a personal story that might go on for four or five sentences, you might make a statement. Or instead of starting with 3 questions, you might just start out with a single question. Clearly, you're not going to have access to a Google search to look for a quote, so those strategies will be more challenging. So really, if you have one statement that relates to the topic and grabs your reader's attention, and then your thesis statement, you're done with your intro. Your body paragraphs may have fewer concrete details than you're used to and may definitely have less commentary. So you're going to need 2 concrete details per paragraph, but I know some students are used to being able to add a 3rd quote. So for a timed piece, you want to limit your evidence to those 2 central pieces of evidence. And so just focus on those strongest examples, especially if you're short on time. And your commentary, which is really your analysis and your explanation, that will also need to be clear and concise and quite possibly shorter. So for your argument thesis, there are 3 things you need to do. You need to clearly state the topic that you're writing about. You need to make a clear claim. This is where your opinion comes into play. And then you identify your 3 main points. So here's an example. This is from an essay about whether or not high school students should be required to take the year after high school off to complete some community service before they go on to college or to career. High school students should be required to take a year off after high school to pursue community service to develop maturity, life skills, and global awareness. So clearly the topic is about taking a year off to pursue community service. They're in favor of that, and they have their 3 main points. They think that it will help develop maturity, develop life skills, and develop global awareness. Now you'll notice they did not write I or me. They did not use a first person. They stayed in the 3rd person, but it is very clear what their opinion is. So you want to do that as well. You don't need to have I believe, I think, I feel. Just state your opinion. It will be very evident to the reader. Then you have the body paragraph structure, which is very similar to the structure that we worked on for our process paper, for our informative process paper, but it is slightly different. So you have your topic sentence that clearly states the main point, the first main point from your thesis statement, right? This is the point you plan to expand and develop in this body paragraph. Then you follow it with your first piece of evidence. Now in a timed piece, this may just be a fact or a statistic or a reference. It may not be a direct quote, and that's okay. And it's something that must support your topic sentence. You follow that directly with commentary. Your commentary is where you're going to explain how the fact or the reference or the statistic or even the quote, how that data supports the claim you have made in the topic sentence and then, of course, in the thesis. I put a little asterisk because if you have time and you can, you're welcome to expand on the reasoning and explanation if you feel it's needed. But one strong piece of commentary is enough for a timed piece. Then you present in the same sentence or in the same paragraph your the counterclaim you plan to address. So if you're having a debate with somebody and they believe one thing and you believe the opposite, the counterclaim is the claim that they would make to try to prove that you are wrong, to discredit you. So you need to think, what is the strongest counterargument to what I am arguing? Then you have your second piece of evidence. That's your second concrete detail after you have stated the counterclaim. And this evidence is there to refute or to prove that the counterclaim is not legitimate. It's not strong. And then you have your commentary where you explain how the evidence that you've provided refutes or goes against the counterclaim to show that that counterclaim is weak or incorrect or invalid. And then your conclusion sentence is really to wrap up your paragraph and transition to the next one. That transition can be using that sentence to transition can be a really good idea. So I wanted to read you an example of a body paragraph. This is a body paragraph and taken from a timepiece about basically purchasing electric cars as a strategy for combating air pollution and whether that's a good idea. Electric cars can effectively combat air pollution. Because cars are the largest private source of air pollution, the decision to purchase an electric vehicle can substantially decrease air pollution. Many argue that battery limitations make electric cars an unrealistic alternative to gas-powered automobiles. So there's your counterargument. However, the average person in the United States drives 33 miles per day, and the average electric vehicle has a battery life of 100 miles. There's the evidence refuting the counterargument. It is possible for the majority of Americans to drive an electric car on a daily basis to reduce their environmental impact. Now, clearly, if I had time or the writer had time, you could develop that and make it a little deeper, but this makes a clear argument. It presents facts. It has a counterargument. It refutes the counterargument with fact, and then it wraps up. Some final thoughts. Like I said, try to stay in third person. So your claims and opinions will be clear from your language. You don't need phrases like, I think, I believe, I feel. Just state what you think without the I, and it will be clear what your opinion is. You also really want to focus on using transitional language because it shows the relationships between ideas, especially when you are dealing with counterarguments. So using words like however, despite, even though, although, in contrast. These words let the reader know that you're presenting ideas that are in conflict or go against each other. And so they show the relationship of those ideas to one another. So please be aware of your transitional language to make sure that the flow of ideas is really clear for your reader. And then if you want more in-depth information on argument writing, a fabulous website is the Purdue OWL Writing Lab, and this is the URL if you want to go there and you want to read a little bit more about transitional language or a little bit more about writing a thesis or body paragraph structure so that you feel more confident coming into the timed essay.